would influence military thinking for centuries to come. Welcome to Historical Moments, where we take you on a journey through time. Our channel is dedicated to bringing you fascinating stories, pivotal events, and unforgettable moments that have shaped our world. Whether it's a significant battle, a game-changing discovery, or a moment of triumph, we uncover the history that defines us. Subscribe and join us as we explore the past, one moment at a time. The ancient city of Tyre stands defiantly on its island fortress, waves crashing against its mighty walls. For centuries, this Phoenician stronghold has remained unconquered, protected by the deep waters of the Mediterranean. But in 382 BC, a young Macedonian king named Alexander arrives at its shores. Determined to achieve what no other ruler has managed before. The camera pans across the narrow strait separating mainland from island, showing the bustling port city rising 50 feet above the sea. Naval vessels patrol its waters while merchants conduct their business, unaware that they're about to witness one of history's most remarkable sieges. Alexander first attempts diplomacy, offering to worship at Tyre's Temple of Melkart. The Tyrians refuse, suggesting he pray at an abandoned temple on the mainland instead. This perceived insult ignites Alexander's determination. If he cannot reach Tyre by conventional means, he will forge a new path. Literally, we see Alexander's engineers begin their unprecedented task, constructing a causeway across the half-mile channel to the island. Cedar logs from Lebanon's forests are driven into the seabed. Stones, earth, and rubble from the abandoned mainland city are piled high. The Tyrians watch from their walls, initially amused by what they consider a futile effort. But as the causeway inches closer, their amusement turns to concern. They launch counterattacks, raining arrows and catapult fire upon the Macedonian workers. Tyrian ships harass the construction crews. The defenders even devise an ingenious weapon, a fire ship filled with burning materials, which they crash into the causeway, destroying weeks of progress. Yet Alexander adapts. He orders the causeway rebuilt, this time wider to accommodate protective towers. The camera shows massive siege engines being assembled, their shadows looming over the growing land bridge. Meanwhile, Alexander does something unexpected. He builds a navy. The once impregnable island is now surrounded. The siege intensifies. Massive stone-throwing machines bombard Tyre's walls while battering rams mounted on ships attack from the sea. The Tyrians fight back ferociously, using heated sand that penetrates armor and burns flesh, and grappling hooks that topple siege engines. After 7 long months, the decisive moment arrives. Alexander launches a coordinated assault from both the causeway and the sea. The camera follows as Macedonian ships break through the harbor defenses. Elite troops scale the walls using siege ladders. The resistance is fierce. Every street, every building becomes a battlefield. Finally, the city falls. The cost is staggering. 8,000 Tyrians killed in combat, 30,000 sold into slavery. Alexander spares only those who sought sanctuary in the Temple of Melkart. The once mighty Tyre, master of the seas, becomes another jewel in Alexander's expanding empire. The camera pulls back to show modern-day Tyre, where Alexander's causeway has since accumulated sand and soil, transforming into a permanent peninsula. This engineering marvel, born from a young king's determination and his army's innovation, still stands today, a testament to one of history's most remarkable military achievements. The Siege of Tyre marked a turning point in warfare, demonstrating that with enough ingenuity and persistence, even the most formidable natural defenses could be overcome. Alexander's victory here would echo through history. inspiring military commanders for generations to come, and proving that sometimes the path to victory means creating your own road, even if that road must cross the sea itself. As the sun sets over modern Tyre, we're reminded that this ancient story of determination, innovation, and the clash of wills remains relevant today. The causeway that Alexander built still connects the ancient island to the mainland, a permanent reminder of how human ingenuity can literally reshape the world. In 332 BC, on the sun-scorched shores of the Mediterranean, stood the fortress city of Gaza, the last Persian stronghold between Alexander the Great and his destiny in Egypt. Rising 40 feet high, its weathered stone walls had withstood countless assaults through the centuries. But they had never faced anything like what was coming. Alexander had already conquered most of the Persian Empire, his Macedonian army cutting through Asia Minor and the Levant like a hot blade through wax. But Gaza, under the command of the battle-hardened Persian governor Batis, refused to yield. Batis had transformed Gaza into a fortress within a fortress. The city sat atop a massive hill, its defenses enhanced by nature itself. Inside, thousands of Arab mercenaries stood ready, their arsenals stocked with enough provisions to withstand months of siege. Batis knew what was at stake. Gaza was the key to Egypt, and he had sworn to hold it at any cost. Inside, thousands of Arab mercenaries stood ready, their arsenals stocked with enough provisions to withstand months of siege. Batis knew what was at stake. Gaza was the key to Egypt, and he had sworn to hold it at any cost. As Alexander's army of 40,000 men appeared on the horizon, the reality of their task became clear. Engineers surveyed the formidable walls with grim expressions. The city's elevation meant that conventional siege towers would be useless. Some of Alexander's generals suggested bypassing Gaza entirely. Why waste time with this fortress when Egypt lay undefended? But Alexander wouldn't hear of it. Leaving an unconquered fortress at his back was unthinkable. More than that, his reputation for invincibility had to remain intact. The siege would proceed, no matter the cost. The first attempts to take the city proved disastrous. Macedonian soldiers, carrying scaling ladders, were met with a rain of arrows and burning oil. The defenders, protected by their high walls, inflicted heavy casualties while suffering minimal losses. Even Alexander himself was wounded by a catapult bolt that pierced his shield and shoulder, causing him to quip, "Zeus must have lied about my divine parentage." Realizing that conventional methods wouldn't work, Alexander ordered his engineers to begin an unprecedented project. They would build a massive earthen ramp that would gradually rise to the height of Gaza's walls. Every man who wasn't fighting was put to work, moving tons of earth and stone. Day after day, week after week, the ramp grew. Persian archers and artillery constantly harassed the workers, but Alexander had his own countermeasures. Massive screens of damp animal hides protected the men from flaming arrows, while mobile shields deflected projectiles. The ramp continued its inexorable rise toward the walls. Batis wasn't idle during this time. Persian sappers dug tunnels beneath the ramp, causing sections to collapse. But Alexander's engineers countered by using wooden frames to stabilize the structure. It became a battle of engineering as much as of arms. After weeks of backbreaking labor, the ramp finally reached the height of Gaza's walls. Alexander ordered his siege towers wheeled forward. These massive wooden structures, now able to reach the battlements, would finally allow his men to engage the defenders directly. The final assault was launched at dawn. Siege towers rolled forward as catapults hurled their payload at the defenders. Macedonian archers provided covering fire, while elite infantry waited in the towers. When the first tower reached the walls, the battle became a brutal hand-to-hand struggle. Alexander, true to his nature, led from the front. He was among the first to reach the walls, inspiring his men by personal example. The fighting was fierce. Every foot of wall had to be taken by force. Every defender had to be overcome individually. When the Macedonians finally breached the walls, the battle was far from over. The defenders fought street by street, house by house. The Arab mercenaries, knowing they could expect no mercy, fought to the death. The narrow streets of Gaza ran red with blood. Batis, the Persian commander, made his final stand at the city's temple. Wounded multiple times, he continued fighting until he was finally surrounded. Alexander, who had been wounded twice during the siege, offered him one last chance to surrender. Batis's response was to spit in the direction of the Macedonian king.
Batis, this is your final chance. Surrender now, and I promise you and your men will be treated fairly.
In a controversial act that would be debated by historians for centuries, Alexander had Batis bound to a chariot and dragged around the city until dead, supposedly imitating Achilles' treatment of Hector's corpse in the Iliad. It was a brutal end to a brutal siege. The conquest of Gaza had taken 2 months and cost Alexander many men, but the strategic significance was immense. The last Persian stronghold had fallen, and the road to Egypt lay open. Alexander installed a garrison and moved on, but the siege would be remembered as one of the most difficult battles of his campaign. The ruins of ancient Gaza still bear silent witness to that desperate struggle. The massive ramp, though eroded by time, can still be traced, a testament to human determination and the lengths to which Alexander would go to achieve his goals. The Siege of Gaza stands as a reminder that in war, as in all human endeavors, obstacles thought insurmountable can be overcome through innovation, persistence, and sheer force of will. In the end, Gaza was just another step in Alexander's march to greatness, but it tested him like few other battles. The siege demonstrated not only his tactical brilliance, but also his relentless determination qualities that would eventually help him build one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. Dawn breaks over the plains of Gaugamela. The morning air is crisp and tense as 2 massive armies face each other across the battlefield. On one side stands Alexander the Great, his Macedonian forces numbering roughly 47,000 men. Opposing him is Darius III, the great king of Persia, commanding an army estimated at over 100,000 strong. The date is October 1st, 331 BC. This day will decide the fate of the Persian Empire. The date is October 1st, 331 BC. This day will decide the fate of the Persian Empire. In the pre-dawn hours, Alexander's scouts return with crucial intelligence. Darius has ordered his men to level the battlefield, creating a massive flat plain perfect for his scythe-equipped chariots and cavalry. The Persian king has learned from his previous defeat at Issus. This time, he's chosen the ground carefully. As the sun climbs higher, we see the Persian army spread out in an impressive line. Their center is held when the elite Persian infantry, the Immortals, resplendent in their scaled armor. On their flanks are cavalry units from across the empire, Bactrians, Scythians, Indians, and Persians. Behind them wait the dreaded scythed chariots, their blades gleaming in the morning light. Alexander's army appears small in comparison. His heavy infantry, the Macedonian phalanx, forms the center. These men carry the sarissa, massive pikes up to 18 feet long that transform their formations into bristling walls of bronze and wood. On the right wing, Alexander positions himself with his companion cavalry. the finest mounted unit in the ancient world. The left wing is commanded by the veteran general Parmenion. The battle begins with a Persian advance. Their scythed chariots charge forward, designed to slice through infantry formations like a knife through cloth. But Alexander has prepared for this. His troops open lanes in their formation, allowing the chariots to pass harmlessly through. Persian drivers find themselves trapped behind enemy lines, where they're quickly dispatched by light infantry specifically positioned for this purpose. With this initial attack nullified, Alexander springs his trap. He's noticed a weakness. In their eagerness to prevent being outflanked, the Persians have stretched their line too thin. As his army advances at an angle, Alexander leads his companion cavalry toward the right. Darius, fearing encirclement, orders his left wing to extend further, creating gaps in his battle line. This is exactly what Alexander has been waiting for. He wheels his cavalry sharply, driving straight for these gaps, aiming directly for Darius himself. The Persian cavalry responds, trying to protect their king, but this only creates more chaos and wider gaps in their formation. Meanwhile, on the Macedonian left, Parmenion faces intense pressure. The Persian right wing, commanded by Mazaeus, launches a powerful cavalry charge. The situation becomes so desperate that Parmenion sends messengers to Alexander requesting immediate assistance. But Alexander can't turn back. He's committed everything to his thrust at the Persian center. The companion cavalry smashes into the Persian lines like a hammer, with Alexander at the very front. The fighting is intense, hand to hand, with spears, swords, and axes. The dust kicked up by thousands of men and horses turns the battlefield into a choking haze. In the chaos, Darius watches as Alexander's forces draw ever closer to his position. Unlike at Issus, he's positioned himself further back, but the sight of the Macedonian advance, coupled with the disintegration of his front line, proves too much. The great king turns his chariot and flees the field. The Persian center, seeing their king abandon them, begins to waver. Alexander's cavalry pushes deeper into their ranks, while his phalanx advances steadily. The forest of Sarissa points, pushing back any who stand before them. But victory is not yet certain. Parmenion's position remains critical. The left wing is barely holding, and now Iranian cavalry has broken through to raid the Macedonian baggage train. Alexander receives another urgent message from his general, but he can't provide help. Not yet. He must first ensure the Persian center completely collapses. His gamble pays off. With Darius gone, the Persian center disintegrates. What began as a retreat becomes a rout. Now, finally, Alexander can turn to aid his beleaguered left wing. He leads his cavalry in a sweeping charge across the battlefield, taking the Persian right wing in the flank and rear. Mazaeus, seeing the fate of the main army, and now facing attacks from multiple directions, orders a retreat. The last organized Persian resistance crumbles. The battle turns into a pursuit. Alexander leads his cavalry for nearly 35 miles, trying to capture Darius, but the Persian king has too great a head start. He escapes to Ecbatana, leaving behind his army, his baggage train, and effectively, his empire. The casualties tell the story of the defeat. The Persians lose nearly 50,000 men, while Macedonian losses are surprisingly light, around 500 killed. But numbers alone don't capture the significance of Gaugamela. This battle marks the effective end of the Persian Empire, though mopping up operations will continue for 2 more years. Alexander occupies Babylon unopposed shortly after the battle. The greatest city in the world opens its gates to the young king from Macedon. He takes possession of Darius's vast treasury and declares himself king of Asia. The Battle of Gaugamela stands as a testament to Alexander's tactical genius. Despite being outnumbered at least 2 to 1, fighting on ground chosen by his enemy, he turned these disadvantages into advantages. His clever deployment, The discipline of his troops and his ability to spot and exploit weaknesses in the enemy line all contributed to one of the most decisive victories in military history. The battle also marked a turning point in world history. The Persian Empire, which had dominated the Near East for 2 centuries, effectively ceased to exist. In its place would rise a new Hellenistic world where Greek culture would blend with Persian, Egyptian, and Indian traditions to create something entirely new. As the sun sets on the blood-soaked plain of Gaugamela, Alexander stands triumphant. He is no longer merely the king of Macedon or the leader of the Greeks. He is now the undisputed master of the greatest empire the world has ever seen, and he is still only 25 years old. The year is 330 BC. As our story opens, morning mist clings to the jagged peaks of the Persian mountains. A narrow path winds through the snow-dusted rocks. The Persian Gate, a natural choke point that has protected the heart of the Persian Empire for generations. Footsteps crunch in the frost as Persian commander Ariobarzanes surveys his position. Below, through gaps in the swirling mist, he can see the first glints of Macedonian armor. Alexander the Great's unstoppable army approaches, having already conquered most of the known world. But here, in this treacherous mountain pass, Ariobarzanes knows he has a chance to change history. But here, in this treacherous mountain pass, Ariobarzanes knows he has a chance to change history. The Persian commander has positioned his 40,000 men brilliantly. They're hidden among the cliffs and crags, invisible to the approaching Macedonians. Massive boulders sit ready to be rolled down onto the narrow path. Archers are positioned on both sides of the canyon, arrows nocked and waiting. This is where Persian ingenuity will meet Macedonian might. Alexander's army moves steadily forward, their confidence born from 3 years of continuous victories across the Persian Empire. Their formation is tight and disciplined, the famous Macedonian phalanx that has crushed all opposition. But in this narrow gorge, their usual tactics are useless. The path is barely wide enough for a few men to walk abreast. As the Macedonian vanguard enters the narrowest part of the pass, Ariobarzanes waits. The moment must be perfect. When nearly half of Alexander's army has entered the killing zone, he gives the signal. The mountain itself seems to come alive with Persian soldiers. Boulders thunder down the slopes, smashing into the tightly packed Macedonian ranks. Arrows rain from both sides of the gorge. The disciplined Macedonian formation dissolves into chaos as men scramble for cover that doesn't exist. The snow turns red with blood as Alexander's elite troops fall by the dozens, then hundreds. The great Alexander himself, for the first time in his campaign, is forced to order a retreat. His men stumble backward, shields raised against the continuing barrage of rocks and arrows. The Persians have achieved what no other army could. They've stopped the unstoppable. The Persians have achieved what no other army could. They've stopped the unstoppable. But Alexander the Great isn't called great without reason. As night falls, he gathers his commanders. Local shepherds have come forward, offering to guide the Macedonians through treacherous mountain paths to outflank the Persian position. It's a desperate gamble. The paths are barely suitable for goats, let alone an army. But Alexander knows that staying means certain defeat. Under cover of darkness, Alexander splits his force. He leads a portion of his army on the treacherous mountain climb while leaving enough troops behind to maintain the illusion of his entire army's presence. The night is bitter cold, and several soldiers slip to their deaths in the darkness. But they press on. The night is bitter cold, and several soldiers slip to their deaths in the darkness, but they press on. Dawn breaks, and Ariobarzanes believes he's still in control of the situation. His men remain in their positions, raining missiles down on the Macedonians below. But then horns sound from above and behind. Alexander's flanking force has completed their impossible night march. The Persians find themselves caught in their own trap. Macedonian troops attack from above and below. The Persian army fights desperately, knowing retreat means leaving the heart of their empire defenseless. The Persians find themselves caught in their own trap. Macedonian troops attack from above and below. The Persian army fights desperately, knowing retreat means leaving the heart of their empire defenseless. Ariobarzanes and his men fight to the last, their sacrifice buying time for King Darius III to flee further east. The battle rages for hours. The narrow pass, already slick with blood, becomes a chaos of close-quarter combat. The Persian Gate, for centuries a symbol of Persian independence, becomes their last stand. Ariobarzanes himself falls fighting, his final acts ensuring his name would echo through history as a symbol of Persian resistance. By sunset, the Persian Gate has fallen. Alexander's army marches through, their path to Persepolis, the Persian capital, now open. But the victory has come at a heavy cost. The Macedonian army has suffered more casualties in this single battle than in many of their previous engagements combined. The Siege of Persian Gate marks a crucial moment in Alexander's conquest. It demonstrates both the brilliance of Persian defensive warfare and the tactical genius that made Alexander legendary. The battle shows how terrain and strategy can level the playing field between forces of vastly different sizes and capabilities. In the aftermath, Alexander honors the fallen Persian defenders, recognizing their bravery and tactical brilliance. He understands that the Persian Gate could have been his campaign's end, if not for luck and local knowledge. The battle becomes a lesson in military history. Never underestimate a well-prepared defender in advantageous terrain. Persepolis falls shortly after, but the battle at Persian Gate remains a testament to Persian resilience. Ariobarzanes, though defeated, joins the pantheon of history's great defensive commanders. His strategic use of terrain and the element of surprise became a blueprint for mountain warfare that military commanders would study for centuries to come. The Persian Gate still stands today, its weathered rocks silent witnesses to that ancient clash of empires. The narrow path still winds through the mountains, though few who travel it now know of the blood once spilled there. But for those who know the story, the wind whistling through the crags still carries echoes of clashing steel, falling rocks, and the defiant last stand of Ariobarzanes and his men. The battle reminds us that history isn't always written by the victors alone. Sometimes, even in defeat, the defenders' courage and ingenuity leave an indelible mark on the story of human conflict. The Siege of Persian Gate stands as a testament to the power of tactical brilliance and the importance of terrain in warfare, lessons that remain relevant even after more than 2 millennia. In the end, this battle represents more than just another conquest in Alexander's campaign. It's a story of innovation, courage, and the eternal human spirit of resistance against overwhelming odds. The Persian Gate became a symbol of how determination and clever strategy can challenge even the mightiest army in the world, if only for a moment in time. In the year 329 BC, on the banks of the mighty Jaxartes River, one of history's most remarkable military engagements was about to unfold. Alexander the Great, having already conquered much of the known world, found himself facing a new type of enemy: the feared Scythian horsemen of Central Asia. The Macedonian army had pushed far beyond the boundaries of the old Persian Empire, into lands where no Greek army had ever ventured. The Jaxartes River marked the northeastern frontier of Alexander's conquests, and here he would face a crucial test of his military genius. The conflict began when Alexander ordered the construction of a new city, Alexandria Escate, literally meaning Alexandria the furthest. This fortress city was meant to secure his empire's frontier and control the vital river crossing. But the Scythians, masters of the steppes beyond, saw this as an intrusion into their traditional hunting grounds. From across the river, thousands of Scythian warriors gathered. These nomadic horsemen were renowned for their archery skills and lightning-fast cavalry tactics. They would ride up, loose their arrows, and retreat before an enemy could effectively counterattack, a strategy that had frustrated armies for centuries. But Alexander had prepared for this encounter. His army was equipped with new weapons specifically designed for this battle. Lightweight artillery pieces called oxybules, a type of crossbow that could be quickly repositioned. These would prove crucial in what was to come. The Scythians, confident in their superiority in mounted warfare, began taunting the Macedonians from across the river.
Come and get us, you Macedonian dogs.
They would ride close to the bank, shooting arrows and shouting insults, believing themselves safe from retaliation.
You can't touch us. We are the masters of the steppes.
This was a fatal miscalculation. Alexander devised an ingenious strategy. He would use his artillery to provide covering fire while his forces crossed the river. But the real genius lay in his understanding of psychology. He would turn the Scythians' own tactics against them. The battle began with a thunderous barrage from the Macedonian artillery. The oxybules launched their missiles across the river, forcing the Scythians to maintain their distance. Under this covering fire, Alexander led a select force across the river at a carefully chosen point. Under this covering fire, Alexander led a select force across the river at a carefully chosen point. The crossing was a masterpiece of military coordination. Light infantry crossed in hide-covered rafts, while cavalry swam their horses across the rushing waters. The Scythians, true to their tactics, began their traditional hit-and-run attacks. But Alexander had anticipated this. His cavalry, led by the elite companion cavalry, formed into wedge formations. When the Scythians approached to loose their arrows, expecting to retreat safely as always, they found themselves pursued by cavalry that could match their speed. The Macedonian horsemen, drilled to maintain formation even at full gallop, drove straight into the Scythian lines. The nomad warriors, unused to enemies who could catch them, found their traditional tactics failing. Their scattered formation, perfect for hit-and-run attacks, became a liability against the disciplined Macedonian assault. What followed was a rout. The Scythians lost over 1,000 men, while Alexander's casualties were minimal. The surviving nomads fled into the steppes, leaving behind their dead and wounded, an unprecedented defeat for these masters of mounted warfare. The Battle of Jaxartes demonstrated Alexander's tactical genius in adapting to new forms of warfare. He had taken the challenge of fighting mounted nomads, a type of warfare that would trouble settled civilizations for centuries to come, and solved it in a single afternoon. The aftermath of the battle secured Alexander's northeastern frontier. Alexandria Escate would stand as the furthest outpost of Hellenistic civilization, a meeting point between the Greek and Central Asian worlds. More importantly, the battle sent a clear message throughout the region. Even the feared Scythian horsemen could be defeated by Alexander's army. The Battle of Jaxartes marked more than just another victory for Alexander. It represented the furthest point of Hellenistic civilization's reach into Central Asia, a milestone in the cultural exchange between East and West. Here, at the edges of the known world, Alexander had proven that his military genius could overcome any challenge, any enemy, and any tactical situation. The river still flows today, now known as the Sir Daria, through the modern nations of Central Asia. While the clash of arms has long since faded, the legacy of this remarkable battle where European heavy cavalry first definitively defeated the horsemen of the steppes, would influence military thinking for centuries to come. Thank you for watching Historical Moments. We hope you enjoyed this trip through history. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories from the past. Until next time, keep exploring the moments that changed history.